Hello, you are listening to the Four Wards podcast, here to help you move forward in League. This is your host for tonight, Frostbite, and I'm joined by three other...
Doom, we're live.
Doom, what are you doing over there?
We're live, buddy.
Oh.
We are joined by three moderately annoying gentlemen.
Well,
no.
Moderately?
No.
How dare you
regular-
shame me like that?
I guess he's just
people.
averaging it out. Doom. At
Extremely
like 100.
annoying.
Yeah.
You guys, manageably annoing.
So it averages out to moderate.
Oh,
Fuck you
my.
trying to say, Steve?
We're a team here.
You guys are so
Yeah.
mean.
We're all going down with the ship here. But before we get into any of that news, Haber, why don't you tell us about the news?
Yeah. Just fucking up right off the bat. Sure. Okay.
Even though I'm pretty sure Doom wrote all of these down.
Yeah. Why don't you do it, Doom?
All right, I'll take it from here. Thanks so much. All right, so first off, big, huge announcement, a little thing we kind of locked down last minute here. We're going to have Cloud9's very own Hylom in an interview this Monday coming up. We're going to try to do it live if we can. We'll kind of let you know as we get closer. The exact time is kind of up in there at the moment. So we'll let you know as we get a little closer to it. But it is a Monday. We will get the audio up as soon as we possibly can. And it's going to be a special interview. So we're going to have 2 episodes next week. So watch out for that. It's going to be awesome. We're
That's gonna be awesome.
super pumped to interview him. I think it's going to be Frost and I for that. So.
Yeah. Can I just say, suck it, LCS rundown?
Oh, man. Shots
Must be
fired.
so- And in February, we're going to be continuing the Art of League series. This is something we're kind of hinting at the last couple of weeks here. We're going to be doing the Art of Top episode on February 25th with author and friend of the network, Pseudonaut. Along with his very special co-author of the book, a well-known LCS pro, who we're not going to say right now. So we're going to leave you hanging on that a little bit, at least a couple
That's right.
moments.
We haven't said it yet.
Yep.
Oh.
So we're going to...
Thank you. I almost just
Yeah.
totally.
We're going to leave you hanging there a bit. But watch out for that. It's going to be sweet. And then the following week, we're going to have Pseudonaut back on for a rehashing of our Art of Support episode with another former LCS pro who we will also name later. And yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Announcements of announcements.
Announcements of announcements. Indeed, Pwn would be proud. Also, speaking of Pwn, Catch the Riot Community podcast. You can download it through normal podcast means or at leagueoflegends.com, and you're going to hear our very own Declawed and Pwnophobia.
Yeah, I've
Listen-
started listening to it a little bit on my way back from work today. I know DeClaude's mentioned it on the proper before, but you get to hear a little bit of the origin story behind his name.
Yes. It's a very interesting story. Learn a lot about Declawed and just kind of like how the podcast and the network got started and stuff. It's a really good podcast overall, period. I really recommend subscribing to it. I subscribed to it and I listened to the whole episode today. It was really good. Last week they had an episode all about the new champion Jhin and like the creator of that champ. So they have some good stuff on there. So definitely sub to them. Check them out. And speaking of which, also, so they brought Declawed on because Riot really wanted to do what they could for us and for Declawed ever since he announced that he had to step back from the podcast due to his health. And so due to Riot wanting to support us, we are reopening the King Declawed t-shirt sale.
The king.
Yep, the King Declawed t-shirt.
Oh God, Haber.
Yeah, Haver's wearing it. Nice. You can get that in t-shirt, hoodie, or like a women's cut tank for him. It's Teespring.
It's a great t-shirt.
teespring.com/KingDC. All of the money goes to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. So please donate and please get a sweet shirt while you can because it's coming back. And Also, send us questions. We'd like to have another listener question episode soon, so please send us questions. We are running dangerously low on questions, and well, every time we say this, you guys just come and flood us with questions. So we love you guys. Please continue it. Also, feel free to tweet them at us. And also, we have gotten a few people hit us up on producer, but we are still kind of looking at producers and stuff. So if you have any interest in producing a podcast, have any experience with editing audio, posting stuff to an FTP, stuff like that, please hit us up. And from that, we're going to hop into our actual discussion with Haberdashing now, this time, actually, for real.
There you go. All right, guys. So to start it off today on the podcast, our trinket tip is going to be about the ward debris. Now, you may have seen these at the start of preseason. We are bringing up now because of a recent change in the 6.2 patch, which is making them a little bit more readable for everyone. So I'm just going to run down the changes here really quick. If you haven't already listened to it on the T-Force proper when they did their 6.2 rundown. So, ward debris are now going to last 240 seconds, down from 300. They glow brightly in the first 10% of its lifespan and stop emitting flames after 30% of its lifespan has passed. And the particle visibly changes and debris shrink after 60% of its lifespan has passed. So, let's talk a little bit about those changes, what they mean, and what sort of information you can gain from it.
Yeah, I think the problem with the ward debris that exist right now is, I mean, it's not providing that much useful information. Like, you just kind of see like a dot where a ward at one point was, and a lot of times it's like in a common ward spot. Like, it's not uncommon to just see a dot there, whereas what Riot's actually trying to do is like turn these into a meaningful form of intel to try and gauge what the enemy team's warding patterns are.
Yeah.
Well, I think the most important part of it is that brightly glowing in the first 10% of its lifespan.
I don't know. The size change is pretty important too.
That is true.
Right, but as far as like useful information goes, that then you can use meaningfully, I think is important, because that is sort of that window of opportunity, that first 24 seconds basically, where if that ward is still if the ward debris is still showing brightly, there's a very good chance that another ward hasn't already been placed down in its spot. After that, I mean, you can kind of assume, okay, if it's a commonly warded section, they've already placed another ward down. But if it's still glowing brightly in those first 24 seconds, you have a chance, especially if you're a jungler, to say, okay, there's no wards here. With a very good degree of certainty, there are no wards here, and you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah, I really like that because it'll help you more intelligently use your sweeper or use your pinks, because I think with the ward debris, a lot of people right now see that ward debris and then they'll be like, oh, and they'll just, throw up their sweeper or throw down a pink, and there might not be nothing there. There might not be anything there because maybe the ward was just from like a earlier scouting ward or something like that. And, people are having a bit of problem just with wasting certain like vision removal in areas because they think that there might still be a ward there because there's debris there. But now that you're knowing like how fresh the ward has, expired or stuff like that, it's going to help you be able to know, all right, well, I don't see any ward debris over here, so maybe I should sweep over here instead.
Like in the last 60%, it's not going to make a huge difference. It'll probably be like the way people regarded ward debris before.
Yeah.
But definitely adding those different particle changes for the first 10 to 30% of its lifespan, I think, is definitely offering a lot more information for people that they can then use.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it feels like in the game and and how often. Because if like you suggested, like if this ends up being a pattern where like being able to make decisions based off of whether or not a ward is brightly glowing within like a reasonable doubt that a ward is not there, like that could actually be a huge change to the way junglers respond when they see them.
Yeah. Well, and you can also, if you see multiple debris in one spot, that can also tell you, okay, this support really likes to ward up this river area. I should be wary because this area is probably warded. I mean, they've got 3 debris here. I mean, there's a good chance that this person has this place warded now as well. So,
yeah,
reading between the lines too.
Right, because the things you notice, like some supports will have optimal spots where they like to ward. If you're on blue side, some supports will still just ward in the river brush, while some other ones will go all the way up to the entrance to blue buff jungle. So knowing exactly where that ward is going to be placed, you're right, does definitely help you identify that if you are looking for it.
Yeah. Well, and you also get to see what they favor. Like if you notice that they have a lot of debris in the lower portions of the map in the middle part of the game, then that tells you that the top areas of the map are more open to you, and you could sneak around in that area because you know that their coverage is focused more on the bottom parts. So, I mean, there's more to read into this debris than just, the first 24 seconds if you know what to look for.
Yeah.
And you study the habits.
Yeah. So why don't we move on then to talking a little bit about our item of the week. Mike, you want to take on that?
Yeah, sure. So item of the week, we're doing the Talisman of Ascension. So it's funny you tell me to do this one because I remember when this used to be Shirelia's.
Shirelia!
Good old Shirey's.
The Reverie.
Shirey. The Reverie.
That item was just amazing back in the day. But anyway, Talisman of Ascension. It now gives you 100% base mana regeneration, 100% base health regeneration, 10% cooldown reduction, and a passive unique called Favor. Being near a minion death without dealing the killing blow grants 6 gold and 10 health. That's that passive for gold gen. And then the active, the cool part, grants nearby allies plus 40% movement speed for 3 seconds. It's on a 60-second cooldown. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, people really underestimate the usefulness of that active, though, because, like, not only is it one of the best disengage tools in the game, but it's a really nice engage tool. It's a really nice like, hey, let's get to an objective after, like, finishing the team fight. It's a really good there's just so many ridiculous amount of uses for it. And the nice thing about the movement speed buff on it in the active is that it's additive to other movement speed buffs, so you can actually make someone like super duper fast.
Yeah, I think part of the reason it's not seeing as much play right now is just because of how prevalent Face of the Mountain and especially Frost Queen's claim is. Like, you used to go back like halfway through Season 5, and supports like Thresh would take that normally over Face of the Mountain. But it really is kind of left up in the air in what you want to do. If you already have plenty of engage potential on your support, it's maybe not the best use of your gold. But if your team is lacking engage, then it really can make a huge difference. 40% movement speed is a huge amount to be able to start something. Even like on Alistar, it helps you close that gap so you don't always have to rely on the Headbutt Pulverize combo. It helps you follow up CC with your team.
Helps your
to catch people out.
Helps your bruisers get to the back line if they need to.
Yeah.
Just to clarify to what Haber was alluding to, this is the upgraded path for the ancient coin. So
right.
You choose, if you're a support, you're typically choosing either Spell Thief's ancient coin or Relic Shield. If you follow the ancient coin line, and then you get a Nomad's Medallion, along with a Forbidden Idol, those will eventually combine into this talisman, and that's eventually gets to the item that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. I mean, this item doesn't give you as much like tank stats or as much damage stats as the other two do, because I mean, Face of the Mountain gives you more tank stats, Frostwing's Claim gives you more damage potential. This doesn't really give you either. It just kind of gives you that health and mana regen, which I mean is pretty useful for just about anyone, but it doesn't help you. It's kind of best for.
It should be said that like the health regen aspect of the passive is arguably better than the Face of the Mountain or Targon Shield part of it for just sustaining in lane.
Yeah.
But at that expense of giving up kill potential,
well, that's,
and a little bit of extra safety in the laning phase.
And that's if your ADC is landing the CS.
Well, no, it's any minion that dies, even if it's the
really?
even if it's the tower, you still get that.
Only,
Yeah, so
when did they change
your AD
that?
carry can be total shit at it.
I clearly haven't bought this item in forever because
it's very much in some ways the ancient coin line is the laziest of the lines. In that the other lines you don't like. For instance, if you're going Spell Thieves, you generally need to be poking to get the gold, and if you're going Relic Shield, you need to be like farming every now and then. This line, as long as you're just sitting in lane and minions are dying, you are actually gaining gold.
Which is interesting because out of all the actives on these support items, Talisman is perhaps the most time sensitive to use and the hardest to really recognize the right situations for. Frost Queens pop it off. Those ghosts have a stupid range on them. Face of the Mountain, as long as you remember to use it on someone, you're doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Talisman of Ascension, you need to be at the right place at the right time with a good amount of your team to be able to make good use of it.
Yeah, because it only buffs gives allies within 600 range the movement speed buff, so you have to be fairly close to them.
I don't know, but I feel like it's on a short enough cooldown to where you can use this in a lot of scenarios that's beneficial. Like you don't necessarily have to use this when you're grouped up. You can use this to get a teammate off of an inhibitor when you're getting away from pushing lane or something like that. Like there are definitely more opportunities than just
that is the exact example I wanted to bring up. That's like super important for tonight's episode is that moment when everyone's trying to go for the inhibitor, everyone's respawning, and it's like, oh crap, we really need to get out of here because they've got home guards, and then all of a sudden your Jenna's like, I got you, bro, and then she pops her talisman, you all just get the hell out of there.
Yeah, a clutch talisman can really make or break either a team fight or like really end a potential engage or counter engage by the enemy.
Well,
it's
also
super good at disengage.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of opportunities for you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that people don't always like expect. Like if you're all standing in a lane and it's almost ARAM-y, and then all of a sudden somebody pops this and the enemy team starts to move super fast, it's like, oh crap, we didn't expect this, and then you might catch somebody off guard.
Yeah, if they weren't prepared to fight right at that moment, like maybe they weren't positioned properly or something like that, it's too late. Like they're kind of caught in the position that they're in, and it either forces them usually to either use flashes or fight where they're standing at maybe not the most optimal position for them.
Yeah.
It's also really good for getting bruisers like that need to stick on top of people.
Oh my
like
goodness.
Just like an Olaf all of a sudden gets this speed boost.
Trundle. Give Trundle the speed boost and let him just like be able to run up close enough to throw up a pillar behind them, trap them in. Oh.
Yeah.
I feel like never mind. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to wrap up the discussion here because we should get moving on to our main topic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And our main topic this week is on overstaying and overextending. So last week we talked about gaining a lead, pushing that lead to carry to a victory. But overstaying and overextending, it's a good way to gain a lead and then lose games. Yeah. So Frost, I mean, take it from there. Talk to us a bit about like why it's so bad.
It's honestly, it's just one of those things where, I mean, it's a broad topic, and we answered a listener question that was somewhat relevant about staying under tower a few episodes ago. But it really just in general, one of the really important things to learn and improve at in League of Legends is to understand when is the right time to just get the hell out of somewhere and recognize when you're in danger. And especially just assume all the possible things that your opponent can do to you, because the moment that you think you're safe and then you get engaged on and then like lose a major objective, that's a good way to take a lead and just like completely start like swinging things around. It's a way to like put yourself in a situation where you can no longer come back, and it's most of the time just it has to do with somebody playing greedy and or not having the game sense to predict that the enemy could potentially punish you for your positioning.
Yeah,
So
perception matters a lot too. We can't ignore perception. Not having
it's
the
huge.
awareness to know, like, oh my goodness, I'm at their golems, and I don't know where any of their freaking 5 are. This is not smart.
And I think a lot of the motto of the preseason changes that people thought is like, okay, games are so snowballing now. Win early, you win the game. But League of Legends, despite all the changes that have happened in the last few years, it's always been a game where if the game goes long enough and people are greedy and they don't end the game, like eventually it reaches a point where everyone gets their items and the death timers are long enough that like you can't afford to make mistakes and get caught overextending anymore.
Yep. That's why you don't forfeit at 20.
Exactly.
Yep.
The Declawed principle.
Don't forfeit ever.
Yes. So what I did was we're going to break down a couple different common examples where people overstay and talk about the danger of that and how to recognize when you might be overstaying and when it's just a good idea to get the hell out of there. And I thought the first place to logically start is the laning phase, where it's very common that people overstay. I noticed very frequently when I've played in a lot of normals with lower level players recently that I get away. I like sometimes I'm just farming and I'm just doing my thing, and then it's just like that one moment where the other player thinks that they're fine and I recognize that they're not, and that swings the entire laning phase because they overstayed.
Oh, absolutely. I think I see this one top a lot because so many top laners have good kill potential at like level 3 or level 4, and like being able to bully your lane opponent and them just not staying and being kind of on an island in the top lane most of the game. When you have that kill potential, you take it because there's so many times where you're probably not gonna get punished by a jungler for going in on it. So it's a good time to like just go for that, that person who's just really leaving themselves out there. And this is one thing I struggled with a lot, and one thing I've learned from a lot. Like, it sucks losing CS. It sucks losing creep waves to the tower. It sucks getting zoned out in lane. But you know what? If it's better than dying, so you're better off just going back. Either run back to lane or use your TP to get back real quick, and just stay there and get the experience at the very least. Like, just don't die.
And most importantly, if you are low, like I consider yourself to be low if you're below a third health. Like, a lot of people say,
Yes.
oh, you're low if you're at lower than half. And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily fair, because some people function better at half. Like Olaf, for example, he functions better at lower than half health. But regardless of the point, like, lower than like a third health is less than half. If you're at that point and you miss your abilities and you're close enough for them to flash and blow a combo on you, you will probably die. So that's when I would say, like, you're overextending. If you're lower than a third of your health and you're playing a dangerous game by using your abilities and staying within range of them to blow their combo, you're probably gonna die.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
I think you just touched on a gigantic point, and a
Cooldowns.
lot of people don't accommodate for the fact that Flash is in the game. Like you may think that you're sitting under your tower and you know you're too cocky to back because even though you're at a 30-year health,
Oh, it doesn't
so
matter
you're
where
gonna
you are. Yeah.
yeah if you're
If you're within
un-
range, it doesn't matter where you are.
I like there's so many lanes where I would have gone like even or something, and then the enemy laner's like, okay, I'm low on health, but I'm gonna wait for this minion wave to get to my tower, and then the second they move up for CS, I flash gold card ignite, and then it's like the only reason I got this kill, the only reason I got this kill is because you overstayed. I shouldn't have been able to get this.
Absolutely.
That's a huge reason. Like if you ever watch the LCS, why people are not necessarily surprised, but it's a big deal when like a mid laner does get a solo kill, because realistically that shouldn't happen very often.
Ever. Like you should always be able to recognize like how much somebody's combo with ignite can do, because a lot of times the mid laner is going to run that ignite, so you should be able to recognize what his combo plus ignite and some minion damage is going to do to you if you somehow get into a fight in the middle of the lane. And if you don't account for that at the very least, without also accounting for like a jungle gank who flash, you know, jumps you, then like you're dumb. That's why mid ganks, yeah, exactly what Haber said. You shouldn't die to that, so you should recognize it relatively shortly.
I think honestly, like Flash especially, like if you don't think your opponent has flashed yet, or like you think their flash is up, you always need to keep that in account. It's not the range of Jarvan's EQ, it's the range of Jarvan's EQ flash that you need to be safe from and all in from.
And ult, because there's also that as well. He jumps with that.
Yeah. If you can see Jarvan on screen, assume he
Yes.
can get to you.
The same thing
Basically,
with the Mumu. Same thing with the Mumu. Same thing with Vi.
Yeah.
Sejuani. Like, I mean,
Lee Sin.
Lee Sin.
So to Asterishan's point, like let's say 30 your health, you're missing some summoners, things like that. You don't really have as much business being in the lane. You're better off leaving. I would say most of the time you're better off leaving with some notable exceptions. But like I think probably the most notable exception is if you are legitimately trying to force your laner's hand and like your jungler is like waiting in the bush right next to you or something.
Well, I'm
Right.
not necessarily saying back at a third health. I'm saying if you're going to blow your abilities and stay within range of them, of a third health, like if you get anywhere close to them without your abilities, then you're dead.
Especially
Every
with like
time.
no mana or something. Yeah.
Every time.
I mean, that brings like I know you're talking about baiting out the enemy, assuming your jungler is coming in, but even then you have to be careful to not overestimate the combined damage of you and your jungler against your lane opponent.
Well, yeah.
Because I mean, they can still end up killing you and either getting out or still trading 1-for-1. And if you were behind before, you're not in any better position. You're probably farther behind.
That's true.
However, if you die and you get a jungler assist as well at, well, I guess it doesn't really matter now with bounties. It used to matter more.
We still get the assist gold plus
it's true.
bounty spread across everyone.
If you die and the enemy dies, but the jungler gets the assist, that's worth. That's worth.
From a gold standpoint,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the huge thing to keep in mind here is and this is where champion knowledge comes in somewhat, is recognizing what the enemy's all-in potential is. And more often than not, it can be pretty scary as long as they have like summoner spells off. But it's like obviously you'll have a little bit more freedom if you're laning against like a poke champion that's running low on mana to like stay in lane versus like an assassin who still has like flash and ignite up. Like then you probably need to get out of there. Like even with when you're at the half health mark, for instance, it depends, and it depends on who you're playing. But I would say just in general, like there are so many times in lane where you find yourself in a situation where, okay, I'm in the mid lane, we're poking each other. Oh, he poked me pretty bad, but you know, a minute from now, that minion wave's gonna get to my tower and I'm gonna farm it. Like, yeah, it sucks to give up that wave, but if trying to farm that wave means your death and you lose all those minions to tower, that's a colossal goal. and experience shift for that matter.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Oh, like I see ADCs do this notoriously more than anybody else. I feel like they think that they can farm.
BF sword.
BF
man.
sword, I need it!
They think that they can farm that wave at level 3, and like the enemy just killed like the support or something like that, and they're like at a 3rd health, a 4th health, and they don't think that the Vayne Sona are gonna dive, and you're just like, well, they're obviously going to. You need to recognize that if you had the opportunity, would you take it? I mean, I sure as hell would. If I saw less than 4th health, Ashe sitting under turret with just a few minions to protect her.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, if you want to be a better player, like recognizing when your opponent makes this mistake and punishing it can be a huge way to snowball in the game. But going off of what Doom was mentioning before, and what we talked about a few weeks ago, melee versus ranged in particular, like if you think of melee versus ranged in the top lane, we talked a lot in that episode about the importance of, if you're a melee champion, like being able to remain a threat in the lane if you're going to stay in the lane. Like, why is it so important that if you are like you lose most of your health, why is it so important that you back versus a ranged champion?
Because a ranged champion is going to be able to consistently poke you, and the more you stay in lane and just are taking that harass, taking that poke, then they hit like level 3 or 4, and now they're going to be able to do like their combo on you. They're going to be able to hit you with that high damage combo that's going to be that just enough to finish you off.
Yeah.
Sorry,
quickly, how many of those like range people that you're fighting against have like some sort of quick dash to engage with a combo? And if you're low as a melee, exactly.
All of them.
If you're low as a melee, you're just asking to die.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because you're sitting there and you're like, oh crap, I got hit with another Gnar boomerang, and then he hops towards you and he just keeps hitting you with auto attacks, and then you get hit by that passive, and it's like chunk dead.
Even another part of that, like even if like you're staying farther back now because you recognize that they have that potential, whether it's Vayne, Quinn, Gnar, whoever in that top lane that you're facing, they can then push you even farther out of that range to the point of, you may not even be getting experience. And if you want to succeed in that matchup, you need to be at a health where you can get into them first without dying.
That's why when the tables are even, when you guys are like same level and you're on the same playing field and same sort of health, like right off the bat, you need to establish your dominance immediately so that you don't run into the overstaying situation. If you stay aggressive immediately and gain control of that lane immediately, you're not going to run into the issue of overstaying, because they're not going to be able to poke you out, because their options are going to become, do I try to poke him out and hopefully get a kill, or do I miss CS, or do I focus on CS?
Yeah, to Howard's point really is, not only are you in really bad case you won't gain experience, but more often than not, if you are like less than half of your health or like a third of your health in a melee champion and you stay in lane, if that ranged champion has any idea what they're doing, you're not going to get any CS.
And they're going to call for jungler, who's just going to come around your ass and gank you while the ADC or the enemy range just gets into position to clean up with an assist or something.
Yeah, I mean,
free gank.
Yeah, overstaying is such a big problem, and I mean, it's
on
always
both sides.
On both sides, and it's just, if you're not sure whether you're overstaying or not, it really comes down to play safe. Like, the safest option is probably the best option. Yeah, you may lose some CS over it, but it's better than a death usually. So, I'll always be weary of overstaying, and if you think you may be overstaying and you're maybe not that confident in your mechanics, or not that confident with the champ you're playing and stuff, take the safer route, because you're almost always going to be on the better side.
Exactly. Now, what I want to transition to off of that, which is related to what Azrishan was just mentioning, is sort of using the intel that you have to make a proper decision. So the example that Azrishan mentioned was what if the jungler comes and then what if he comes into the picture? So if you can look at there's a lot of factors to consider when staying in lane. And the first one we obviously mentioned was your health. But in addition to that, that can include mana. It can include summoner spells like Flash we talked about before. And probably one of the biggest ones that Azrishan mentioned is where is the enemy jungler? Like the way you can stay in a lane with low health, especially if you know the enemy laner, like he's already used his Flash or something, you might be able to get away and get that one wave before you recall. But if you don't know where the enemy jungler is, that's a factor you need to consider.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. A jungler will punish you for one of the biggest ways you're going to get punished for overstaying or overextending. This whole topic we're talking about is a smart jungler. Smart junglers, I mean, that's what you do is you punish overstaying and overextending. That's how you win games, is by punishing overstaying and overextending. It's one of the easiest ways to climb in lower elos. It's one of the easiest ways to play a good aggressive jungle, is just watch for overstays and watch for overextensions, because you will almost always get a kill out of them.
If you are on the side where you are low, hugging your turret, the one thing I think people need to learn is that the turret is not your friend.
No.
The turret is a structure. It has a formulaic way of dealing with people that come under it, whether it's minions, champions, whatever. People who learn that formula can abuse that really easily, whether it's turret aggro juggling, or even like most of the time, like if you are that low, the enemy jungler is around, he just needs to come in, take 2 turret shots, you're dead, he's on his way.
Pantheon doesn't give a fuck if you're sitting on your turret.
Nope.
It's not a big of a boon as a lot of people think it does. It helps fend off aggression to let you CS under it, and it protects you from that laner who has to go all the way through it. But as soon as you start adding in multiple factors on top of that, like if they have their flash up, if they have a gap closer, if the jungler's there, so on and so on, if there's a lot of
aware
if they know
the turret.
Yeah. That turret becomes a lot smaller of a threat.
Yeah, especially as the game goes on. Like levels 1 through like 5, okay, turret dive is kind of actually somewhat scary, but people get their ultimates, they get their like untargetability, they get their gap closers, and then all of a sudden like turrets become less and less of a safeguard, and you actually need to like respect the fact that you could be dove and killed at any moment.
Absolutely.
So
totally right.
I think we talked a lot now about what happens in lane, and sort of different ways that people overstay. I mean, one last thing I'll mention on that point before I transition is a lot of times it's good advice, if you get a kill to, shove the lane to the enemy tower. Keep in mind when you do that, you're also jungle bait when you try and do that. So if you're super low, like maybe not the best idea.
Yep. But it just comes back around to knowing where that jungler is or having a good idea.
Exactly. So now let's transition into, instead of talking about, you yourself overstaying in the laning phase, let's talk a little bit about objectives. In objective-based play is obviously the way to succeed at League of Legends, and it's a lot of times it's super important to go for objectives after something happens, like you get a kill, you win a team fight, etc. But overstaying to try and go for objectives is a really, really easy way to like not only like throw a lead, but like potentially just outright lose a game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, say you go and you have a little skirmish, and maybe you kill their jungler, and you're like, great, their jungler's dead. Let's go for dragon. But you guys don't have any significant tank, or maybe you guys are all really, pretty low, and you're, not going to be able to tank Dragon too well. And, you take a few hits from Dragon until you guys are all sitting, around a quarter health. And their AP carry and their AD carry are up. That 2-man can use that Dragon along with them and punish your entire team. Not only do they have the potential to steal that Dragon now, but they have the potential to kill all of you for even trying to get that Dragon.
Or I mean, pushing a lane.
Yeah, or even just forcing you off Dragon, because then you've spent all that time and have nothing to show for it.
And then maybe probably having to back so they get to push a lane anyway.
Right.
I think my favorite example and as Rishan brought it up before, is my favorite example where people always overstay is right as that moment where people turn on, like, for instance, like mid inhib, and it's like, all right, like, we want to fight, like, we got this tower, all right, we're gonna stay, we're gonna get this inhib too. And it's so common that, like, people don't press tab, they don't look at death timers. If people are coming up and it's after the 20-minute mark, A, they probably have home guards, and B, like, they probably just bought an item, and C, you're all probably low from the team fight that got you these objectives in the first place. Yeah. Oh, it's rough.
And you don't have cooldowns, so I don't know what the hell you're thinking about staying when you don't have ultimate, Mr. Tryndamere.
Yep.
And there's, like, other factors that play into this as well. I always love bringing up Twisted Fate as an example, is that if the enemy team has globals, you combine that with something like home guards, and it's like, all right, let's get this tower, and then Jinxel, and then Twisted Fate ports behind you, and Draven axes come out. Like, that's a good way to get free kills for the enemy. It's you gotta know what your enemy team is capable of, and make sure you don't overstay. So, like, and I will say this, I am the person on this podcast who probably harps on the most about how much I love smart pings. My favorite smart ping of them all, by far, is the back ping.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing.
I like the on my way ping, but I understand your point.
Too. I like
on my way is nice, but there are so many moments in this game where it's just like you have 2 to 3 people, and it's like, we can do this. Like, we can get this extra tower. And if you spam the back ping and they're like, all right, yeah, maybe they are respawning and get out, that's avoiding a game being thrown altogether with, like, one spam of a ping. That's all it took.
Yeah. I mean, especially with death timers being so long, if a game gets to like 30 minutes, if you overstay, you can potentially throw the entire game just in that one play. And it happens so often.
Oh, absolutely.
Where it comes down to one team fight, one mistake later on, where the cost of it is just so huge.
And there's a lot of people who are always like, oh, my teammates are always dying and, like, getting caught and all these things and stuff. You can't control your teammates' character. But what you can do is give them intel, and ideally give them intel well in advance to respond to what you're saying. So maybe you will ping and people will ignore you. It'll happen. But
even, like, go ahead. Well,
yeah,
like,
say it.
Like, even going in, if you're the one looking up in the tab, okay, 20 seconds till Jinx respawns if you're trying to get that inhib tower or whatever. At least your team has a better idea. If they're not looking at death timers themselves, you have that long, and then you get the fuck out.
And you can't control your teammates' map awareness, but I definitely have saved a lot of top laners' lives where I was just looking at the minimap and I saw, like, that the jungler whopped over a ward, and I just, like, back ping, like, dude, you're about to get ganked in, like, 5 seconds. Like, get out of there. And, like, that... little things like that add up if you really, really take advantage of that ping.
Right.
Get the hell out. Spam the back ping. Use your Shurelya's or your talisman. Get out of there. Just also, we talked a little bit about this before. Another important thing is just recognizing when you don't have a chance of contesting the enemy team and not wasting your time, like being at a dragon and the enemy team's got like 20 kills on you, like, oh, we can totally contest this dragon if they like miss every ultimate and accidentally all hit D and F at the same time.
Right. It can happen.
You never know.
Right.
They could DC, and then maybe we'll get the dragon. There's always that element.
Right.
I'll get Froggen right on that.
So I think
shots fired.
just to wrap this
what?
up here, let's get into some general overextending tips. So a lot of vision is everything.
Fucking vision. Like, if you're going past a point where you don't have vision lateral to you, or at least in the entrance areas of how people would get to the area you're at, no es bueno. Like, don't do it. Like a lot of people who try to split push run into this a lot, where they're like, oh dude, I can shove lanes and towers so fast, I'm just shoving this down, it's no problem, and blah blah blah. But they don't make sure they establish vision first, and then suddenly they've got 3 or 4 people collapsing on them, and boom, they're dead.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
they've effectively done nothing. Like, it's just, you have to have vision. That is like the whole point of what overextending is. It's extending past your field of the known, of what you know. And once you go into that area of the unknown, of what you don't know, you're just asking to die. You're asking to shoot yourself in the foot.
Right. I want to transfer this into another scenario. As far as like chasing kills, this is something I myself am pretty guilty of doing. You really have a window of opportunity when the enemy starts trying to run away. Once they get into that fog of war, if you don't know the dude potential of who's going to be coming after that, because you can guarantee if anyone's up and nearby, they're going to be responding to that teammate, and then suddenly they're turning it around on you. You really have, what is it? The jungler, you can assume 5 seconds. Other lanes, like mid lane, if you're in the bottom lane, you have 15 seconds from when you last saw them, that you have a good window to keep chasing. So like roughly as soon as you start chasing them, you have 5 to 7 seconds. After
depending
that,
on who you can see, yeah.
You kind of just have to give it up after that.
And chasing for kills will also oftentimes distract you from an objective that's actually way more valuable.
Yeah, also like flashing aggressively after a kill is really a good idea. Like, if you're going to flash aggressively to make a play to like get a kill, like lock down someone instantly so that you can get the kill. But if you're chasing someone and then flash after them, that is almost always a bad idea, because now if you need to turn around and run, you don't have your flash to get away. And if you don't know where all 4 of the other members of the team are, there's a good chance one's going to show up there and punish you for not having your flash. So
I got a question for Haber.
Yeah.
What does face checking mean?
Oh, man. Throwing me back here. Face checking is the epitome of face palming in League. You have wards for a reason. Please use them. And we've talked about this before as far as like the dude potential of a certain bush. If you don't see them on the map, you can kind of assume for your own safety that they are in that bush that you are just going to walk into. So when you are in that situation, if you don't have a ward, you don't have a skill shot that you can fire off to check for enemies, it's better to just kind of avoid it until you have a better certainty that there's going to be no one else in that bush.
And for the literal definition, if people are new to the game and have heard the term thrown around,
Yeah, I
space
should've
checking
said
means
that.
it means like if you to go walk into a bush directly or like a unwarded area and just like blindly like put your face into the area, and then if anything's waiting for you there, like you would have no prior time to prepare for it because you have no clue, you have no vision. Now, one thing that I see a lot in lower level play, that it's a really simple thing, I think, that it just like drives me nuts when I see it, is a lot of times we talked about towers not mattering that much in terms of protecting you from dives in certain situations, but in terms of giving you a place to farm, it can often be quite useful. And a lot of times, especially in bot lane, I see like one bot lane is losing and then they lose their tower early for whatever reason. That happens. You can recover from that. But what you can't do is go back all the way to where the lane was before and just farm like nothing happened.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so many people overlook the safety of a tower and how far you really are from a tower. If you're in the middle of a lane and your first tier tower is gone, how far you are from that next tier tower. Like it is, I mean, it's far enough from the first tier tower, sometimes from the middle of the lane, depending on like, you know, who's collapsing in on you. But to that second tier tower, there are very few times you're going to get away, especially if you don't have vision of the flanks. So it's if once again, if you're pushing into an area of the unknown, it's time to either vision up or get the hell out.
The mid game, like mid to late game, there's so many times where, you know, so AD carries hear the thing a lot. You need to farm. You need to farm. So it's like, all right, I'll go out and farm. It's okay to farm, you know, relatively close to base if you see where people are. That does not mean you have permission to farm past the river with no vision, like a mile away from a tower, because it means you have a giant target over your head. I know, because I'm often the person hunting that person. And there's nothing I like more than when they do that.
Da-da. Da-da.
Meow.
Then they walk like
and
right
Rengar comes in.
And then you hear me over Skype being like, "Hey guys, watch this." And then you see just like combo Luxel, legendary.
Yeah.
Overextended. Sorry.
GG.
And one last point, I also wanted to add it as a general tip. People often ask about the ARAM in mid, or like essentially
the mid lane shuffle.
Yeah, sure. The mid lane shuffle. That's got a nice ring to it.
I love calling it that.
If you're in that situation, especially if you can't see everyone on the enemy team, try and get vision around the flanks. It's very common that is eventually going to get broken up by one person, maybe the jungler, like coming in from the side and then CCing to engage. The last thing you want is your carries to not be prepared for that situation. So if you're sieging a tower, try and get vision of all the possible entrances that people might come from. And similarly, when you're going for like a dragon, like try and get vision of the entrances, so that way you don't walk into a situation and then end up getting yourself like into a point of no return.
Well, yeah, and like especially depending on who they have on their team, like if they have someone who's a good hard engager, someone who wants to sit in the flanks, like a Fiddlesticks or a Wukong or a Malphite, someone who wants to get that like ult over a wall, you definitely want to make sure you have your flanks covered, because the instant that you're grouped up and you don't have vision of them, you can almost always assume here they come over that wall.
Wukong is such a fantastic example here, because imagine you're sieging up mid lane and then Wukong is MIA. If you can see when Wukong goes into the side bush and when he starts to stand still, it's pretty obvious he's went into his clone and he's going to try and like engage. And so your AD carry can back off, you can, you know, not get clumped. But if you don't see the fact that he popped his stealth, and then you only see him when he's in a cyclone. It's way too late. Like, you've overextended. You're done for.
Yeah, and he's like, not today.
It's feeling a bit radiant talking about Wukong today.
So,
Speaking of which, yeah, listener, I want to give a big shout out to listener Needs More Dragons, because he helped me be a completionist and got me the Radiant Wukong skin today. So I now have every Wukong skin. And
speaking of Needs More Dragons, Doom, why don't you tell us about his Twitter question?
Yeah, Needs More Dragons. Thank you so much for writing in, and thank you so much for the skin. I really appreciate it, man. It's friggin' awesome. He tweeted at us, "Hey, I want to hear you guys discuss what is an acceptable KDA. KDA is kills, deaths, assists. More importantly, deaths for support, that is. I feel like I do a good job to keep my ADC alive in most situations, but I feel like I die too much. What do you guys feel is an acceptable KDA moving up the ranks?"
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is an odd question.
I personally, if I die more than 5 times, I feel like I didn't play the best. But that's just in general. Like, if I die more than 5 times, doesn't matter how long the game is in general at all. I felt like I didn't play that well.
I feel like especially as a support, you're not as worried about kills. Obviously, you want your deaths to be as absolutely low as possible. I mean, really try to keep your deaths to 3 and under, really. I mean, try to die as little as possible. And for assists, obviously, you want to be getting assists because that's going to be a big source of gold income for you. And you want to do your job, which is supporting your team and setting up kills for other people. So kills, not that important in my opinion. I mean, if you get kills, if you got to secure a kill, you secure kills.
Yep,
deaths,
so is bloodthirsty sports.
Yeah, deaths don't die. I mean, we say it all the time. Don't die. Dying is horrible. Stop dying.
Well, okay. I think the difference, as a support, you need to recognize the difference between dying with your carry and dying for your carry. There is a difference, and recognizing when is appropriate, like dying for your carry. Like, always dying for your carry is definitely going to be better than your carry dying. That is something we can all agree on. If your carry's going to die and you die in their place, then I'd say that you did your job. But if you die and your carry dies,
no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think go for it.
Well, I want to rate if you really want to, like, the average KDA across League of Legends is usually 2.3 something. It varies a little bit. So that can sort of be a benchmark that you have for yourself. Okay, I need to get at least twice as many assists as I do deaths. And I totally agree, especially with what Mike was saying. In an average game, having more than 5 deaths usually isn't good. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to, did you destroy the Nexus? And, especially as the support, dying isn't the worst thing in the world to happen. Because when you're dead, I mean, the gold that you're missing out on isn't very noticeable. The experience, also not as impactful as someone else on your team dying and losing the experience. But if you're able to get into fights, use your utility well, and it ultimately benefits your team to winning the game, that's the part that's really important.
Haber, you hit on the main point I wanted to mention, which is KDA does not destroy the enemy nexus. It doesn't win the game. So obviously there's good things and bad things in a KDA. And I kind of agree with Asteration. If you're getting up to 5 or more deaths, it probably means that something went wrong in the way you were playing the game, is such that it caused a situation where maybe you were over engaging, maybe you were deep warding too much with that, and you were face checking. There's probably a root problem that's causing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Back a few. Well, back a few seasons ago, one of my favorite supports to play was Sona. And going back through and analyzing my games, I realized that I died so much on Sona. And when I looked at it, it was really when I was out trying to get more wards on the map in places that I really shouldn't have been, trying to get wards in enemy jungle and the like. So you really need to take a look at when you're warding. What information do you have available to yourself? Is it going to be okay if you are going that deep? Because at most supports, you're generally underfunded. You don't have a whole lot of survivability. You're just walking into a bad situation looking to die and hand over 300 gold fairly easily.
Yeah.
And that and like, I'm sorry.
I want to specifically focus on something that you, Haber, that was good. You focused on the deaths and what was causing them to be so high, and then you changed it. Like, that's what a KDA needs to be used as. So when you're looking at your KDA, don't use it as something like some Call of Duty bullshit pride thing where you get off on feeling superior because you have a better KDA than somebody. Like, that's not what this KDA is for.
Jesus
KDA is to tell you where you are as far as how good of a player you are in comparison to, you know, how well you perform. And using that to better yourself. That's what you should be focusing on when you're talking about a KDA. Laying that to rest. Laying that stupid. I'm so sick of do we talk about KDA? Because I really, really hate that debate. But I think it's necessary because you ought to look at your KDA. It is important. It tells you what you do right and what you do wrong as just an overview. And if you have a lot of assists or you have a lot of deaths, that means you're in the fights, but maybe you don't make the best choices. And that is something that you can work on. And if you just ignore that, that's not going to be helpful for you in the long run.
Yeah, at Hesitation, you're completely spot on. And
yes,
what I advise Dragons is not to think, okay, what is an acceptable KDA? Because, I mean, honestly, what I would say is you should be shooting to not die. I mean, that's your thing. But what you should do is, okay, every time you do die, like let's say you only got 3 deaths, go through each of those deaths and say, why did you die?
Why?
Could you have done something different? Did you die for the team? Did you win a team fight because you engaged? Did you go deep warding and then you died? That's way more important than having 4 deaths versus 3 deaths.
Yeah. That's completely true because sometimes you have to die for the greater good.
If you're that Sona or Annie that needs to flash tibbers and stuff, sometimes there's no coming back from that. But if you did your job, that's what's important.
Exactly. Like those deaths are sometimes necessary, and that's why I give myself leniency. Like, I'm very critical of the way that I play whenever I play games. It's part of the reason why I get frustrated sometimes, because if I just start playing like shit, then I just get mad at myself. But the point is like, if you got to give yourself some leniency, because you are gonna need to sacrifice yourself. Anybody that plays chess knows that pawns are gonna die, so you gotta go knowing that that's gonna happen. So
how does it feel, support mains?
Sorry.
You pawns. All right, and we got time for one last question here. So we've got a question from Dakota. My question pertains to new players. I've been playing for 2-ish years now, and the game seemingly becomes more and more complex with additions of more and more overloaded kits. What do you think Rito should do to minimize the daunting task, even grasping a vague idea of 120 plus champions and their 4 abilities plus passive? And my second question is, what can the player do to overcome this learning curve?
Jeez, man. Holy cow.
That is a big question.
Steve, you want to start this off since you answered the email?
Yeah. So ultimately, the thing here is that it's impossible to learn everything all at once. And Riot fully understands that there is several different things that impact what makes this game have such a huge learning curve. And I think the advice that we usually give when bringing a new player in, and I think this is more, even though this isn't the direct question you asked, I think it's the real important answer is, what can you do to make it fun for the person that's first getting into the game? Because if you have fun with the game, like if you play a few games, and I mean, you're probably going to struggle because you're new to the game, but you latch onto something like, oh man, Master Yi is so fun, I love his resets or something, and like you stick with it, that's the type of encouragement that encourages learning. And with that desire comes the ability to learn 120 champions and 4 abilities.
You know, I don't think we're at the point anymore. Like, I was thinking about this the other day, honestly. Like, because he's right. Like, it's huge. There's so much math going into this point now. Like, mathematical advantages are becoming less and less of a thing because of just how many factors there are to take in. And I mean, they are still a factor, and you should definitely consider them. And of course, pro play will. But you know, as we're getting more and more in tune with how things are working, it's very evident that you're not going to know everything, and that's not the point. The point is being very good at what you do know, and learning to use what you do know to overcome the things that you encounter. Like, you don't need to know all the ins and outs of every ability. You just need to know how the ins and outs of one ability and how it interacts with others. And when you get a pool, that's the whole point of a champion pool. You have a pool of people that you enjoy. Of course, you're not going to know every 120, champion plus. It's not your job. And why would you want to? That's excessive and insane.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of every champion kind of becomes notorious for one thing or another. And I think learning that thing that each champ is notorious for is one of the easiest things you can do. Like, just having like little things like Yi, okay, resets. What does Muno do? He doesn't die and he goes where he pleases. What does Garen do? If he's going to hide in a bush and he's going to surprise you from the bush, watch out for bushes. Like, and if you watch more games, you watch, maybe some LCS and stuff, you'll see a lot of champs and get to learn, what they do, which is kind of cool. That's a great way to get good exposure. Yeah. But at the same time, too, sometimes you just have to play the matchup, and sometimes you have to go, man, I just got my shit kicked in by that Darius. All right, well, I see what he did. Go back and watch that, that replay. Use Plays TV or use replays.gg or things like that, and record your games and go back and say, all right, so why did he kick my ass? Okay, well, he was pretty strong early game. All right, he duels well, so maybe I need to, play it a little safer against that. Or,
Doom, what you were saying real quick, because I want to make sure we don't lose this point, is you said it's sometimes there's key abilities you need to watch out for, like you talked about Yi and resets and things like that. It's when you're introducing a new player to this game, and Dakota wrote a lot about that, how do you introduce somebody new? They might quit out of frustration. It's, if you're going to try and help them out, they're going to load into a game and they're going to have no clue who they're laning against. So don't go into the details like, Blitzcrank has a passive on his ultimate that shocks minions and champions. They don't need to know that. What they need to know is
watch for hooks.
Watch out for hooks. If you stand behind minions, he can't hook you, and that's a huge part of playing around his kit. The rest they'll learn over time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I wanted to talk about this a little bit because a lot of the questions you wrote in this email, they're very similar to the questions we asked ourselves when we first started doing this podcast. How are we going to do a podcast where we introduce people to League of Legends when there is so much information for people to grasp? And the more we did the podcast and we had some good feedback, the more I realized, we don't need to have everyone learn everything. It seems really complex to people who've been playing for years and years, because we've had to build on all this knowledge and rewrite all of our history and yada yada yada. For people coming into the game, I don't know. In some ways, it's actually easier because of some changes Riot has made to visibility, timers,
champion
spotlights, stuff like that. They really help induct people into League of Legends, and if they so choose, then they can start learning a lot of the finer details of it. So at least when we come to the podcast, we had to decide, okay, let's talk about just one part of the game and try to break it down for people to understand. But when you're trying to just get new people coming into the game, I think Steve and everyone else is right. It's just, you got to have fun first.
Yeah.
You got to make people want to learn more. And the information is out there and it's available enough that people, if they really want to get into it more, they can learn it pretty. I shouldn't say pretty easily, but it's available. It's out there for people to learn who want to learn it.
Yeah.
Super easy to find. Information
I mean,
on League of Legends is incredibly easy to locate.
Tell them to check out websites. Tell them to check out content developers. Check out podcasts. Check out all of our podcasts. Check out other podcasts. Check out check out the champion spotlights. Like you can watch a champion spotlight in the time it takes to like lock in a champion and wait until you get through the loading screen. Like you can watch a champion spotlight and learn enough about your lane
Some
opponent.
of those newer ones, maybe they might need to have a potato on their team.
Fair enough, but like, watch a champion spotlight. Watch Black and Ola and TLDR patch notes. Like, there are so many YouTube videos out there. Just start looking up content developers because there's so many people, besides us who want to help teach you that game. Mm-hmm. And one of the best things I think, and we've covered it before, that Riot came out with was the starter pack. The starter pack for $5 that gives you a few champions. It gives you Annie, Garen, Ryze.
Real quick, isn't that like for free on Amazon right now?
Yeah, if you link your League account to your Amazon account right now, you get the starter pack for free.
Whoa, does
right
that
now.
get Annie for free? Like
yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean it's a really great deal. So like, you can do that too and actually even get it for free. And I'm sorry, it doesn't matter what meta, what level, of understanding you're at, anything like that. If you want a good starter champ to tell someone to play, tell them to pick up Annie. Because as soon as they figure out how to flash ult someone, they can single-handedly win team fights and games, period. Annie is a beast at any elo. I mean, hell, look at people like Anniebot who only play Annie and are like, masters level players.
I had a fucking alt named Tibbers for a reason.
Tibbers.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, seriously, Annie, such a great champ. So just give them that one champ and be like, all right, here's Annie, and show them like on YouTube, here's a flash Tibbers. That's why you play Annie, and just let them go from there, and you'll notice them start to try to get those flash Tibbers, and then they'll get good at it, and they'll be like, "Holy crap, they just won that team fight for us!" So,
I also recommend Annie for a lot of players for a lot of reasons. I don't want to just make a only blanket statement and say play Annie for new players. What I do want to say is, what I like to do when I bring someone into League of Legends is I try and gauge what is their background like. If you played MMOs before, if you played RPGs before, just what their playstyle might be like. Right. Do you like to assassinate? Do you like to be like unkillable? Do you like to do this? And then I recommend a champion that's like got a relatively easy learning curve for like a newer player, and then say, here, try out this champion. You said you like, assassins, like maybe try out Master Yi. Like you said you might like to be like tanky, like try out maybe Garen, like things like that, and like play around what they like. And the sooner you can help them find something that they're like, oh, this is awesome, that's like what's going to have them stick with the game. That's what's going to make them learn 120 champions eventually.
Hell, that's how I picked up Wukong. I mean, I was looking at champions and stuff, and one of my buddies recommended Wukong. Yeah, Lux recommended Wukong because when I played EVE Online, I used to fly a ship a lot called the Pilgrim, and it was a cloaking ship that like would lock someone down and engage hard on them, and it could deal a decent amount of damage, and it could tank pretty decently. And that's kind of what Wukong is. He's sneaky, he engages hard, and then he can pin people down, and he can do a decent amount of damage, and he can still take a beating while doing it.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of cloaking, we're about to disappear from visibility from this podcast, and that might have been the worst segue I ever did.
Oh, it's not the worst.
So let's I just wanted to say, as a reminder, we're going to have a double dose of 4 awards next week. Stay tuned for more details regarding the interview with Cloud9's very own High. And of course, we'll be coming to you next week again with another awesome podcast of the Four Wards variety. So I am Frostbite, and I'm joined by Azra, Doom, and Haberdashing. And I am signing out. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.